That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over the rugged California coastline, casting long shadows across the training grounds at Naval Base Coronado. Master Chief Petty Officer Elias Kane stood at attention, his boots planted firmly in the damp sand where the Pacific met the training river, a controlled stretch of water designed to mimic the unforgiving currents of operational zones. At his side, Rex, his Belgian Malinois K9 partner, sat rigid, ears perked, black eyes scanning the horizon with the unerring focus that had saved Elias's life more times than he could count. The air carried the sharp tang of salt and wet earth, mingled with the faint metallic scent of oiled rifles stacked nearby. "Platoon, form up!" The command echoed from Lieutenant Commander Harlan Voss, a stern figure in crisp camouflage utilities, his voice cutting through the low hum of idling Humvees. The SEAL candidates snapped into position, their movements precise, synchronized like the ticking of a well-oiled chronometer. Elias, as the senior handler for the K9 unit, positioned himself at the edge of the formation, Rex's leash taut in his gloved hand. The dog's flanks rose and fell in steady rhythm, a silent testament to the bond forged over years of grueling drills and shadowed deployments. Elias ran a hand along Rex's harness, feeling the familiar warmth beneath the reinforced vest. No words passed between them, none were needed. Loyalty wasn't spoken, it was etched in every shared breath, every instinctive flank during a raid. The exercise was standard. A simulated river crossing under simulated enemy fire, testing endurance and decision-making in adverse conditions. Voss paced the bank, clipboard in hand, his eyes missing nothing. "Kane, your unit's on point. Rex leads the scent trail. Remember, this is about chain of command, no deviations." Elias nodded sharply, saluting. "Understood, sir." The platoon murmured affirmations, the weight of their NVGs and rucksacks settling like an invisible yoke. In the SEALs, order was the lifeline, the unyielding structure that turned raw recruits into operators who could infiltrate a hostile village at dawn or extract a high-value target from a collapsing safehouse. Elias had lived it, the chain from enlisted to officer, from handler to commanding officer, each link forged in sweat and scrutiny. As the whistle blew, the team moved. Elias unclipped Rex's leash, signaling with a low hand gesture. The dog bounded forward, nose to the ground, weaving through the underbrush where instructors had planted decoy scents. Gunpowder residue, simulated explosives. The river rushed nearby, its current swift but contained by upstream barriers, a far cry from the real rapids of the Hindu Kush or the Mekong Delta. Elias followed, at a measured pace, his M4 carbine slung low, eyes tracking Rex's every pivot. The platoon fanned out behind, boots splashing into shallow eddies, radio chatter crackling softly, clear left advancing. It started small, innocuous, a splash downstream, barely audible over the water's roar. Elias glanced up, spotting a bright yellow rubber duck bobbing in the current, carried from some civilian picnic upstream, perhaps discarded by a family on the public access trail. Harmless, he thought, refocusing on Rex. But the dog froze mid-stride, head snapping toward the river. His hackles rose, a low rumble building in his throat, not the alert for threat, but something deeper, instinctive. Elias knew that sound. It was Rex's way of signaling distress, the same vibration he'd emitted during a flood-op in Afghanistan when he'd dragged a wounded Afghan child from debris. "Easy, boy," Elias murmured, stepping closer. The platoon pressed on, Voss's voice barking corrections from the bank, but Rex didn't budge. Instead, he edged toward the water, paws sinking into the mud, eyes locked on the toy as it spun toward the artificial rapids section. a deliberate hazard zone with churning white water meant to test flotation gear. Elias's gut tightened. Protocol was clear. K9 units stayed on dry ground unless deployed for search. Entering the water uncommanded risked the entire exercise, could flag a handler's control as compromised. "Rex, heel!" Elias commanded firmly, his voice steady but laced with the quiet authority that had earned him the Silver Star. Rex hesitated, whining softly, his body coiled like a spring. The toy ducked under a low branch, accelerating toward the drop-off where the current intensified, foam spraying against rocks. Elias scanned the bank, no civilians in sight, no immediate danger, yet something in Rex's posture pulled at him. A mirror to his own unspoken doubts from past missions, the child left behind in a village raid because orders prioritized extraction over aid. He clipped the leash, ready to pull back, when a faint cry pierced the air, not from the river, but echoing from the opposite bank. A child's voice, distant, panicked. "Ducky! No!" The platoon halted, heads turning. Voss's radio squawked. "What the hell is that? Kane, report." Elias's mind raced. Recon scans showed no unauthorized personnel, but families sometimes wandered the perimeter. If a kid was out there chasing that toy into the rapids. Rex strained against the leash, paws digging in, his whine escalating to an urgent bark. The dog's senses, honed beyond human limits, had latched onto something Elias couldn't yet see, perhaps the child's scent on the toy, carried by the wind. "Stand down, Kane!" Voss shouted, striding forward, his face hardening. "That's not our op. Secure your animal." The lieutenant commander's order hung heavy, a reminder of the hierarchy. Elias's role was tactical support, not rescue detail. Interfering could mean a formal inquiry, a blemish on his record after 15 years of flawless service. But Rex lunged forward, the leash snapping taut, his powerful frame pulling Elias a step closer to the edge. The toy vanished into the froth, and in that instant, the quiet bond between man and dog became a fracture in the rigid order. Elias's hand trembled on the leash, the weight of duty clashing against the pull of conscience. What harm in a quick check, or was it defiance, the kind that unraveled careers? The river's roar swelled, drowning the radio static as Elias made his choice. Elias's grip tightened on the leash, the coarse nylon biting into his palm as Rex's muscles bunched beneath his hand. The dog's bark cut through the morning haze, sharp and insistent, pulling at the frayed edges of Elias's resolve. Lieutenant Commander Voss's command echoed again from the bank. "Kane, stand down!" But the words blurred against the child's distant cry, now clearer, laced with the raw edge of fear. "Ducky, come back!" The voice was small, belonging to someone no older than 6, hidden by the thick riparian brush on the far side. In the SEALs, choices like this weren't made in isolation. Elias's mind flashed to the chain of command briefings, the endless repetitions of protocol drilled into every handler. K9 assets were extensions of the operator, not autonomous agents. Deviating from orders invited scrutiny from the JAG office, could cascade into reprimands that tainted not just his record, but the unit's cohesion. Rex had been his shadow through 3 tours. Nights in the Syrian desert where the dog's nose had sniffed out IEDs buried under sandstorms. Moments in Fallujah where that same instinct had yanked Elias from a collapsing wall. To unleash him now, against direct orders, was to risk everything for a civilian anomaly outside their operational envelope. Yet the river didn't wait. The yellow duck bobbed wildly, caught in an eddy that spun it toward the rapids more. Rocky outcrops engineered to simulate Class 3 whitewater, unforgiving even for trained swimmers. Elias's breath came steady, disciplined as he scanned the platoon. The candidates held position, faces masked in neutral focus, but their eyes flicked toward him, toward Rex. This was the unspoken test of the ranks. Not just physical endurance, but the quiet fortitude to question when the system blinded itself to the human cost. "Permission to investigate, sir," Elias called out, his voice level, projecting over the water's rush without a trace of challenge. He kept his posture square, salute half raised, embodying the respect that had elevated him from enlisted grunt to master chief. Voss paused mid-stride, his clipboard lowering slightly, the lines around his eyes deepening in the slanting light. The lieutenant commander was a veteran of the Gulf, his own scars hidden under starched collars, but his doctrine was ironclad. The mission defined the boundaries, and civilians were handled by base security, not tactical units mid-drill. Negative, Kane. Secure the animal and resume formation. That's an order. Voss's tone brooked no debate, his gaze locking onto Elias like a targeting laser. Radio static crackled from his vest mic, a quick check-in with base control confirming no alerts on the perimeter. The platoon shifted uneasily, boots grinding into the gravelly bank, the scent of damp kelp rising as the tide nudged inland. Elias felt the weight of their scrutiny, the invisible threads of loyalty that bound the team. To obey meant reining in Rex, letting the toy, and whatever prompted the cry, vanish into the foam. To defy. It would be the first crack in his impeccable service jacket. Rex whined again, low and urgent, his nose twitching toward the current. The dog's training encompassed threat detection, not child retrieval. But Elias knew the limits of that programming. Malinois, like Rex, operated on a deeper level, instinct sharpened by partnership, sensing vulnerability in ways protocols couldn't quantify. Elias's free hand hovered over the clip, thumb brushing the release mechanism. The river's hum filled his ears, a relentless underscore to the pounding in his chest. 15 years in, he'd followed orders that left villages smoldering, extracted assets while locals pleaded from the shadows. This was different, small, immediate, a child's toy as the unlikely fulcrum. With a measured exhale, Elias unclipped the leash. "Go find," he whispered, the command soft but clear, overriding the lieutenant commander's directive in that split-second fracture. Rex didn't hesitate. The dog launched forward, powerful legs propelling him into the shallows, water spraying up in crystalline arcs that caught the sun. His vest gleamed wet, harness straps taut as he sliced into the current, paws churning with the efficient stroke of a creature built for pursuit. Elias stepped to the edge, carbine slung aside, ready to follow if needed. But protocol anchored him. A self-imposed tether. Voss's face darkened, his voice booming. "Kane, what the hell are you doing? Reel him in, now!" The platoon froze, the exercise grinding to a halt as heads turned. One candidate, Petty Officer Ramirez, murmured into his radio, logging the incident per standing orders. The air thickened with tension, the salty breeze carrying the faint, acrid whiff of adrenaline sweat from the team. Elias met Voss's glare steadily, his response clipped and professional. "Sir, Rex has a confirmed alert. Possible civilian in distress, requesting backup from shore patrol." The lieutenant commander strode closer, boots splashing into the ankle-deep water, his utility blouse darkening at the hems. "You just compromised the entire drill, Master Chief. If that dog's injured or the ops flagged, it's on you." But even as he spoke, his eyes tracked Rex's progress. The dog powered downstream, undeterred by the building swell, his head bobbing above the waves as he angled toward the toy now wedged against a submerged log. The rapids loomed ahead, whitecaps foaming like distant artillery bursts, the drop-off where the current accelerated to dangerous speeds. From the opposite bank, the child's cry sharpened. "Help! Ducky's stuck!" revealing a small figure scrambling down the embankment, a boy in a faded red jacket, no more than 5 feet from the water's edge. unsupervised, likely from the public trail, his tiny hands clutching a stick as if it were a lifeline. Rex reached the toy first, nosing it free with a splash, but instead of retrieving, he veered sharply toward the boy, barking in rhythmic alerts that echoed off the rocks. The current tugged at the dog's flanks, slowing him, but he pressed on, the bond with Elias manifesting in unyielding drive. Elias's pulse steadied, the handler's calm reasserting itself amid the chaos. He keyed his own radio, voice modulated. "Base, this is Kane. Unauthorized civilian on East Bank, child approximate age 6, K9 en route for welfare check. Over." The response came swift, laced with urgency. "Copy, Kane. Shore Patrol dispatched. Maintain visual." Voss stood beside him now, silent, his earlier fury tempered by the unfolding reality. The platoon watched from the formation, a tableau of disciplined witnesses to the breach. Rex neared the boy, who knelt at the water's edge, reaching tentatively. The dog's bark softened to a reassuring woof, and as he closed the distance, the river's roar seemed to hush, leaving only the quiet rhythm of waves lapping at the bank. Elias's choice hung in the balance, the first ripple of consequence spreading through the ranks like a stone skipped across still water. In that moment, the line between duty and morality blurred, testing not just one handler, but the unyielding code that defined them all. The river's current clawed at Rex's underbelly as he powered through the final stretch, his paws striking the water with rhythmic precision, each stroke a testament to the endurance drilled into him during countless water confidence exercises. Elias watched from the bank, his stance rigid, the leash dangling empty in his fist like a discarded lifeline. The boy's red jacket blurred against the green tangle of foliage, his small frame teetering on the muddy slope as he stretched toward the bobbing duck. "Stay back, kid," Elias muttered under his breath, though the words were swallowed by the foam. Rex's bark modulated to a steady, reassuring cadence, the signal for non-threat contact, honed from urban clearance drills where distinguishing civilian from combatant could mean the difference between mission success and tragedy. Voss's boots splashed beside Elias, the lieutenant commander's presence a wall of authority, his breath coming in controlled huffs. "This ends now, Kane. Call him off." But Elias held his ground, eyes fixed on the water, the salt-stiffened fabric of his utilities chafing against his skin in the rising humidity. The platoon remained in formation upstream, their silhouettes etched against the morning sun, silent observers to the unfolding breach. Ramirez's radio whispered acknowledgments to base, the static a faint underscore to the tension coiling in Elias's shoulders. 15 years of service flashed in fragmented clarity, the weight of a rucksack in the Hindu Kush, the quiet nod from a CO after a flawless insertion, the unspoken pact with Rex that had pulled them both from the jaws of ambush. Rex reached the shallows opposite the boy, his front paws finding purchase on a submerged root that jutted like a skeletal finger from the bank. Water cascaded from his coat in silvery sheets, the dog's chest heaving but unbroken, his black eyes locking onto the child with the singular focus that had detected hidden caches in Taliban strongholds. The boy froze, stick dropping from his hand, his wide eyes reflecting the Malinois' soaked form. "Doggy." The word trembled out, fragile against the river's growl. Rex didn't lunge. Instead, he nosed the yellow duck toward the bank, then circled back, positioning his body as a barrier between the child and the edge. It was instinct, layered over training. The same drive that had him shadowing Elias through minefields, now redirecting toward vulnerability no protocol anticipated. From the far bank, a woman's voice shattered the moment, sharp with maternal alarm. "Tommy, get away from there!" She burst from the trail, a civilian in jeans and a windbreaker, her face paling as she sprinted down the embankment. Base security sirens wailed in the distance, closing fast, their Doppler shift marking the perimeter breach. Elias keyed his radio again, voice clipped. Base, visual on civilian female approaching. Child secure with K9, no immediate hazards. The response crackled back. Copy! Patrol ETA 2 mics. Stand by for debrief. Voss rounded on Elias, his finger jabbing toward the river, veins standing out on his neck like taut cables. You think this is a game, Master Chief? Unleashing an asset without clearance? That's not initiative, that's insubordination. The words landed heavy, echoing the formal language of Article 92 in the UCMJ, the spectre of non-compliance that loomed over every operator's career. Elias met his gaze, salute snapping up in reflexive respect, the leather of his glove creaking. Sir, Rex's alert indicated distress. The child was at risk of entering the water. I assessed and acted to prevent escalation. It was the handler's creed spoken plainly. Protect the mission, protect the team, protect what the senses revealed beyond the orders. The platoon stirred subtly, a ripple of murmurs breaking the disciplined hush. One candidate shifted his weight, boot scraping gravel, while another adjusted his NVGs, the faint click audible in the charged air. They were witnesses now, their after-action reports destined to capture this fracture in the chain. Elias felt the weight of it, the invisible ledger, where loyalty to the unit clashed with the pull of conscience. Rex had the boy pinned gently against the bank, the dog's wet fur brushing the child's arm, eliciting a tentative giggle that cut through the tension like sunlight piercing fog. The woman reached them, scooping the boy into her arms, her eyes darting across the river to the uniformed figures. Thank God! He just ran after his toy. I turned my back for a second. Shore patrol vehicles crunched to a halt upstream, tires grinding over the access road, their lights flashing in staccato bursts against the waves. 2 MPs in starched blues disembarked, one barking into a handset while the other scanned the scene with binoculars. Voss waved them over, his posture straightening into command mode, the earlier fury channeled into procedure. Incident on the training river. Unauthorized civilians, K9 intervention, secure the area. The MPs nodded, fanning out, their boots thudding methodically along the bank. Elias clipped an imaginary leash in his mind, the absence of Rex's warmth at his side, a hollow ache, like the quiet after a firefight. As the patrol bridged the gap with the inflatable Zodiac, zipping across the current with practiced efficiency, Elias waded into the shallows to retrieve his partner. The water lapped at his knees, cold and insistent, carrying the earthy scent of silt and distant pine. Rex paddled back willingly, the duck clamped in his jaws like a trophy from a scent drill, his tail wagging in low arcs beneath the surface. Elias hauled him onto the bank, running gloved hands over the dog's flanks, checking for strains or cuts with the familiar efficiency of post-mission triage. "Good boy," he murmured, the praise quiet, earned. Rex shook off, spraying droplets that caught the light, then pressed against Elias's leg. The bond reasserting itself in that simple contact. The MPs ferried the civilians across, the boy clutching the retrieved toy, his mother murmuring thanks that hung awkward in the formal air. Voss oversaw the handoff, his clipboard now a shield as he logged prelims. "Ma'am, this area's restricted during exercises. You'll need to provide statements." But the woman's eyes lingered on Rex, gratitude softening her features. That dog! He came right to Tommy, saved him from slipping in. The words rippled outward, reaching the platoon, where nods passed like silent affirmations. Elias stood apart, water dripping from his trousers, the chill seeping into his bones, as the first tendrils of inquiry took shape. Base Command would review the tapes, drone footage from the exercise, radio logs, witness accounts. Elias's defiance, born of that split-second choice, now cast a shadow over the unit's rhythm. Voss pulled him aside as the patrol cleared the scene, voice low but edged. "This goes up the chain, Kane. Jag will want a full report. You just turned a routine drill into a liability." Elias nodded, the motion precise, his mind already mapping the reckoning. Hearings in sterile conference rooms, the weight of scrutiny on his ribbons, the quiet conversations in the barracks where loyalty was tested not in fire, but in the aftermath of compassion. The sun climbed higher, burning off the mist, as the platoon reformed under Voss's barked orders. Rex settled at Elias's heel, damp fur steaming in the warmth. His presence a steady anchor amid the gathering storm. The river flowed on, indifferent, its currents whispering of choices that echoed far beyond the banks, ripples that would challenge the rigid lines of duty, forcing the institution to confront the human heart beating beneath the uniform. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The afternoon sun beat down on the asphalt parade deck at Naval Base Coronado, turning the blacktop into a shimmering haze that distorted the ranks of assembled personnel. Elias Kane stood at the front of the K9 unit formation, his utility still stiff from the morning's damp, Rex at his heel with a fresh harness. The dog's coat, groomed to regulation standards, despite the faint scent of river silt clinging to his paws. The air hummed with the low drone of a distant Black Hawk on approach, its rotors slicing through the salt-laced breeze, while the sharp tang of gun oil from the armory wafted across the open ground. Lieutenant Commander Voss paced before the group, his boots clicking in measured cadence. Clipboard exchanged for a leather-bound folder that spoke of impending formality. Attention on deck! The bosun's mate's call snapped the platoon to rigid alignment, spines straight as flagpoles, eyes forward in the unyielding posture that defined their world. Elias felt the subtle shift in Rex's stance beside him, the dog's ears flicking forward, attuned to the undercurrent of tension rippling through the ranks. The morning's incident had spread like a classified memo, whispers in the chow hall about the handler who let his K9 off leash, the child pulled from the brink, the civilians now tucked away in a holding area for statements. No one spoke it aloud, but the eyes of the candidates, Petty Officers Ramirez and Hale among them, lingered a fraction too long on Elias, their faces masks of professional neutrality, masking the churn of questions. Voss halted before Elias, his voice projecting with the clipped precision of a briefing room. Master Chief Kane, front and center. Elias stepped forward, saluting crisply, the motion fluid from years of repetition. Rex followed in perfect heel, the leash taut but unobtrusive, a silent extension of the handler's discipline. The lieutenant commander's gaze swept the formation, ensuring every ear was tuned. This morning's exercise was compromised by an unauthorized deployment of assets, per Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. All personnel will submit to an immediate inquiry. Base command has been notified, and JAG representatives are en route. The words landed like a spent casing on concrete, echoing in the sudden hush. Elias kept his expression impassive, jaw set, but inside, the gears turned. The inquiry would dissect every second, the unclipped leash, the overridden order, the radio log time-stamped at 0847. He'd faced boards before, after a close call in Helmand, where Rex's alert had aborted a flawed insertion. But this was different. Civilian involvement elevated it, threading the needle between tactical protocol and the unpredictable human element. Voss continued, his tone even, devoid of the morning's heat. Kane, you'll surrender your sidearm and restrict to quarters pending review. The K9 unit is grounded, no field ops until cleared. Elias nodded once, sharp. Understood, sir. He unholstered his Beretta with deliberate care, the weight familiar in his palm, and handed it to the waiting master-at-arms, whose gloved fingers closed around it without flourish. Rex whined softly, a low vibration only Elias could feel through the leash. The dog's nose nudging his knee in instinctive reassurance. The platoon watched, boots planted, the sun glinting off their dog tags in unison rhythm. Ramirez shifted imperceptibly, his eyes meeting Elias's for a beat. solidarity unspoken, the quiet loyalty of the ranks that bound them beyond commands. As the formation dismissed with a barked, "Carry on!" Elias led Rex toward the handler's barracks. The gravel crunching underfoot, like the grind of an after-action critique. The base stirred around them. A supply truck rumbling past, its canvas flaps slapping in the wind, the faint crackle of a walkie-talkie from a sentry post, the distant bark of another K9 echoing from the kennels. Confinement to quarters meant no patrols, no scent trials, just the sterile wait in an 8x10 room with cinder-block walls and a single porthole overlooking the grinder. Elias knelt to unclip Rex's leash inside the door, the click resounding in the quiet space. "At ease, boy," he murmured, running a hand along the dog's flank, feeling the steady rise and fall of ribs beneath the fur. Rex circled once, then settled on the mat, eyes tracking Elias with unwavering trust. The first call came at 1400 hours, a sharp rap on the door from Commander Reyes, the squadron's executive officer, flanked by a JAG lieutenant in khakis starched to a knife edge. "Master Chief, we need your statement." They settled at the small desk, the room's air conditioner humming softly, circulating the faint odor of boot polish and damp canvas. Elias recounted the sequence methodically. The toy's splash, Rex's alert, the child's cry piercing the drill. "The dog's training includes welfare response in contested environments, sir. I assessed the risk to the civilian as immediate." Reyes nodded, jotting notes on a legal pad, his pen scratching like radio static. The JAG officer interjected, voice neutral. "And the order from Lieutenant Commander Voss? You overrode it without confirmation." Elias met her gaze steadily, the fluorescent light casting shadows under his eyes. "Affirmative. Protocol prioritizes life preservation. The river's velocity at that point, 4 knots per the exercise specs, posed a drowning hazard to an unsupervised miner. No excuses, just facts. Delivered in the restrained cadence of a debrief. Rex lay watchful at his feet, the dog's presence a grounding force, his tail thumping once against the tile in subtle affirmation. The officers exchanged glances, the weight of precedent hanging unspoken. Cases like the My Lai inquiries, where duty's boundaries blurred into moral reckoning, etched in the annals of military law. Word filtered through the base by evening chow, the incident morphing into hushed legend in the mess deck. Candidates clustered at tables, trays of MRE-style rations pushed aside, their voices low over the clink of utensils. "Kane's dog saved that kid. Voss is pushing for a full tribunal." Hale leaned in, fork paused mid-air. "But chain of command. If everyone freelanced, we'd be chaos." Ramirez shook his head, eyes distant. "It's not freelance, it's judgment call. Rex smelled the kid before we heard him." The conversation wove through the ranks, a subtle current challenging the ironclad doctrine, with Elias's name invoked not as rebel, but as the handler who bridged the gap. Back in quarters, Elias reviewed the squadron's standing orders by the dim light of a desk lamp, Rex's head resting on his boot. The dog's warmth seeped through the leather, a reminder of the bond that defied hierarchies, the ultimate loyalty, unscripted and profound. Outside, the base settled into twilight routine, floodlights flickering on, the low murmur of evening briefings, the Pacific's waves whispering against the shore. The inquiry loomed like a gathering squall, promising scrutiny that would test not just Elias's career, but the institution's capacity for nuance amid rigidity. In the SEALs, redemption wasn't flashy. It emerged in the quiet defense of conscience, rippling outward to redefine the lines of order. Voss's report hit the command desk at 2100, flagged for Admiral review, the pages detailing the breach with clinical detachment. Elias lay on his rack, staring at the ceiling cracks, the weight of potential reprimand settling like dew on his chest. Rex curled nearby, breath even, a sentinel in the dimness. The choice that morning, born of instinct and partnership, now faced the public forge of accountability, witnesses, logs, the unyielding eye of justice. And in that crucible, the true measure of a soldier's mettle would emerge, not in glory, but in the disciplined stand against the tide. The fluorescent lights of the base's conference room buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the polished oak table where the JAG tribunal convened. Master Chief Elias Kane sat at one end, his posture impeccable in fresh utilities, hands folded on the laminate surface. Rex absent, but his absence a palpable void. Like the quiet after a suppressed round, the air conditioner hummed steadily, circulating the faint scent of coffee from a sideboard and the sharper edge of legal pads being flipped. Outside the reinforced windows, the California dusk painted the parade deck in muted grays, the distant crash of waves underscoring the room's insulated tension. Commander Reyes presided from the head, flanked by two JAG officers. Lieutenant Hargrove, a sharp-eyed woman with a stack of classified ops reports, and Captain Ellis, a grizzled veteran whose ribbons gleamed under the lights like silent indictments. Lieutenant Commander Voss occupied the witness chair first, his testimony delivered in the measured cadence of a post-mission debrief. At 8:45 hours, during routine river-crossing exercise, Master Chief Kane received a direct order to secure his K-9 asset. He acknowledged, then proceeded to unclip and deploy without authorization. This action halted the platoon, exposed the unit to potential liability, and breached chain-of-command protocols. Elias listened without expression, his gaze fixed on a point midway across the table. The wood grain blurring slightly under scrutiny. The morning's choice replayed in fragments, Rex's whine, the child's cry threading through the river's roar, the unyielding tug of conscience against the leash of duty. Hargrove leaned forward, her pen tapping rhythmically. "Commander Voss, did you assess any immediate threat to the civilian at the time?" Voss paused, his jaw tightening imperceptibly, the lines etched deeper by years under the sun. "Negative. Recon indicated no perimeter breaches. The alert was unverified, handler intuition overriding tactical directive." The room shifted as Petty Officer Ramirez took the stand, his boots echoing softly on the tile as he approached. The young SEAL's face held the fresh polish of recent quarrels, but his eyes carried the weight of the platoon's unspoken code. "Ma'am, sir," he began, saluting before seating. "I was on point support. Rex's alert was textbook, distinct from standard threat response. The dog's posture indicated welfare, not hostile. By the time the cry came through, the child was visible, seconds from the edge." Ellis nodded, jotting a note, the scratch audible in the hush. "And your assessment of Kane's decision?" Ramirez met Elias's gaze briefly, a flicker of solidarity passing like a hand signal in the dark. "It prevented escalation. If we'd waited for clearance, the kid goes in." Rex bridged the gap. Testimonies layered on, each a brick in the edifice of scrutiny. The MPs recounting the civilian handoff, their logs time-stamped with the Zodiac's crossing. The base security chief detailing the family's statement, the mother's words, captured verbatim. "That dog knew before anyone else." The boy's toy, now evidence in a plastic bag on the table, its yellow rubber dulled by drying mud, served as a tangible anchor to the abstract charges. Elias's turn came at 1900 hours, the tribunal's rhythm unbroken, like the steady patrol of a sentry. He rose, saluting, and took the chair with the economy of motion that defined his service. "Master Chief Kane," Reyes intoned, "state your rationale for overriding the order." Elias's voice emerged even, honed by briefings from Raqqa to the South China Sea. "Sir, Rex's behavioral indicators, hackles, vocalization, scent fixation, signaled imminent distress. Per K9 Handler Doctrine, FM 319. 17. Assets are authorized for life-saving intervention in fluid environments. The river's current, combined with the child's proximity, presented a clear hazard. I acted to mitigate, notifying base concurrently. No defensiveness, just procedure recited like a standing order, his hands steady on the armrests, calluses rasping faintly against the vinyl. Hargrove interjected, sliding a printout across. The drone footage, grainy frames frozen on Rex mid-swim, the toy spinning in the current. This shows the deployment at 0847:12. Lieutenant Commander Voss's order was logged at 0846:58. That's 14 seconds. You had time to confirm. Elias nodded once. Affirmative, but confirmation would have delayed response by minimum 2 minutes. River velocity at 4 knots. Drop-off hazard within 30 seconds of alert. The bond with Rex is calibrated for such margins. He's detected submerged threats in zero-vis ops. The room absorbed it, the weight of operational precedent clashing with the rigidity of Article 92. As the session adjourned for the evening, the corridor outside hummed with base activity, a detail marching past in synchronized footfalls, the metallic clank of a gate closing, the low growl of a generator kicking in. Elias paused at the water fountain, the cool stream grounding him, tasting of minerals from the desalination plant. Whispers followed him back to quarters. Candidates in the hall, their voices hushed over the scuff of boots. Tribunals digging deep, canes holding line. Hale's murmur reached him, laced with respect. The platoon's loyalty manifesting in these quiet affirmations, a counterpoint to the formal inquisition. In his room, the door clicked shut, sealing out the world. Elias reviewed the day's transcript on a secure tablet, the screen's glow illuminating Rex's empty mat. The dog was kennelled for the inquiry, standard procedure to isolate variables, but the space felt hollow without his partner's steady breath. Elias's mind mapped the ripples. If reprimanded, it could mean demotion, reassignment from the K9 unit he'd shaped over a decade. Yet the testimonies hinted at fracture lines in the system. The human element protocols often sidelined, the K9 bond as an underutilized asset in civilian interfaces. Dawn broke with a follow-up summons, the tribunal reconvening under brighter lights, the air thicker with unresolved tension. The mother's video statement played on a projector, her voice steady but edged with relief. I saw the uniforms on the bank, but it was the dog who came. Tommy's safe because of him, and the man who trusted him. Gasps rippled through the observers, a mix of squadron reps and JAG aides. Their notebooks forgotten mid-note. Voss shifted in his seat, the revelation piercing the procedural veil, forcing acknowledgement of the instinct that orders couldn't quantify. Reyes called a recess, his gavel rapping like a suppressed shot. The board will deliberate on expanded scope. K9 protocols in hybrid scenarios. Elias stood, saluting out, the corridor's fluorescent strips buzzing overhead as he walked. The public reckoning unfolded not in shouts, but in these layered disclosures, witnesses peeling back the uniform to reveal the conscience beneath. Media inquiries had trickled in overnight. A local outlet sniffing the civilian angle, base PAO stonewalling with ongoing review. The incident, once contained to the riverbank, now echoed through channels, challenging the institution to adapt or fracture. Back in formation that afternoon, the platoon drilled under interim oversight, boots thudding in unison on the grinder, sweat beading despite the coastal chill. Ramirez fell in beside Elias during a break, voice low over the water break's trickle. They're seeing it now. The dog's not just gear. Your stand's making waves. Elias nodded, capping his canteen with a twist, the metal cool against his palm. The reckoning pressed on, a forge testing metal, where loyalty to partner and platoon converged with the slow grind of reform. The river's lesson lingered, its currents a metaphor for the inexorable flow toward accountability, pulling the rigid hierarchy into uncharted depths. The tribunal room's air grew heavier as the afternoon wore on, the recirculated chill from the vents carrying the faint, acrid trace of dry erase markers from the whiteboard, where timelines were sketched in precise lines. Commander Reyes reconvened the board with a measured rap of his knuckles on the table, the sound echoing like a distant rotor wash. Elias Kane remained seated, his utilities creased from hours of stillness, fingers interlaced on the armrest, the subtle calluses from leash work pressing into his palms. Outside, the base's evening routine hummed, the metallic scrape of a hangar door closing, the low murmur of a briefing spilling from an adjacent office, the Pacific's relentless surge against the seawall. "Lieutenant Hargrove, present the procedural analysis," Reyes directed, his voice even, threaded with the authority of a man who'd navigated more inquiries than deployments. The JAG officer rose, activating a projector that bathed the room in cool blue light, frames from the drone feed advancing with clinical ticks. Per FM 319, 17 and updated K9 directives from 2022, handlers retain discretion in exigent circumstances where life is at stake. Master Chief Kane's deployment aligns with Section 4. 2. Instinctive response overrides in fluid, non-combat zones. She paused, the beam highlighting Rex's form mid-current, pores churning water that gleamed like shattered glass. However, Lieutenant Commander Voss's order establishes a chain of command precedent. The 14-second window represents a potential for verification. Voss shifted in the observer's row, his posture rigid, the faint creak of his chair the only betrayal of tension. His testimony earlier had been unyielding, but the footage, time-stamped, irrefutable, now peeled back layers, revealing the razor-thin margins where protocol met peril. Elias kept his gaze on the screen, the images stirring the phantom pull of Rex's leash in his hand, the dog's wet fur against his leg post-retrieval. The tribunal wasn't just judging him, it was dissecting the bond, that silent pact forged in kennels and kill houses where a Malinois' nose outpaced human hesitation. Captain Ellis leaned forward, his ribbons catching the light like polished brass. "Master Chief, you've served 3 tours with this asset. Walk us through the bond's calibration in real-time ops." Elias nodded once, rising to the stand with the economy of a man accustomed to economy in all things. "Sir, Rex and I train on adaptive scenarios, scent trails in low-vis, welfare alerts in urban clutter. In Syria, 18, he signaled a buried child during a rubble clear before thermal picked it up. The river was no different. His fixation wasn't threat-based, it was protective. I read the cues, hackles, vocal pitch, and released. Delay meant risk to the civilian. The room absorbed it, pens scratching notes, the collective breath held in the way of witnesses weighing testimony against doctrine. Hargrove interjected, sliding a dossier forward. Civilian statements corroborate. The child was unsupervised, toy discarded into the current. Mother's account notes Rex's approach as non-aggressive, positioning to block the edge. She glanced at Voss. "Commander, your post-incident log mentions liability exposure. Did that include potential for positive outcome?" Voss met her eyes, jaw set. "Affirmative. But initiative without clearance erodes unit cohesion. If every handler interprets exigent, we lose structure." Reyes steepled his fingers, the gold of his wedding band glinting. "This board recognizes the save. No casualties, civilians secured. But the override invites broader review, K9 protocols in training perimeters." He turned to Elias. "Your actions, while effective, highlight gaps. Recommendations will follow." Dismissal came at 1700, the gavel's echo fading into the corridor's bustle. Sailors double-timing to chow, the sharp tang of diesel from a fueling truck wafting through an open door. Elias saluted out, the motion crisp, his boots marking steady cadence down the hall. Whispers trailed him, a JAG aide murmuring to a squadron rep, Kane's case could rewrite the handler manual. Back at quarters, the door clicked shut, sealing in the quiet hum of the mini-fridge and the distant thrum of base generators. Rex was released from kennels, padding in with the master-at-arms, his nails clicking on tile, coat carrying the clean scent of post-grooming shampoo. Elias knelt, clipping the leash absent-mindedly, then unclipping it, the ritual a bridge to normalcy. "Missed you, partner," he said low, hand tracing the dog's ears, feeling the subtle twitch of muscle memory. Rex leaned in, nose pressing warm against Elias's wrist, the contact speaking volumes where words fell short. The tribunal's weight lingered, but here, in the unadorned space, loyalty was tangible, unquestioned, unjudged. Word from the mess deck filtered through Ramirez's evening check-in, the petty officer rapping once before entering, a foil packet of field rations in hand. "Tribunal's leaning reform, Chief. They're pulling in K9 experts from Pendleton, talk of hybrid training mods." Elias nodded, portioning kibble into Rex's bowl, the dry clatter grounding the moment. "It's not about me. If it sharpens the edge for the next op, it's worth the heat." Ramirez lingered, eyes on Rex lapping water. "Platoon sees it that way." Voss even nodded in the hall, said the dog's instinct saved face for the unit. The younger SEAL saluted out, leaving the room to settle, shadows lengthening as the porthole framed a twilight sky streaked with contrails. By 2200, the base PAO issued a muted release. "Routine inquiry concludes with commendation for welfare response. Procedural updates pending." It rippled through channels, secure emails to squadron leads, a bulletin on the grinder's notice board fluttering in the night breeze. Elias reviewed it on his tablet. Rex curled at his feet, the dog's flank rising steady against his boot. The defiance that morning, sparked by a child's toy and a dog's unerring pull, had cracked the facade, exposing fault lines in the doctrine. No demotion, no reassignment, just a directive for revised protocols. Elias tapped as lead consultant, his name etched into the evolving code. In the quiet, as the base lights dimmed to red, Elias felt the shift. Not victory, but validation. The institution, rigid as a salute, bent slightly under the pressure of conscience, allowing the human and canine element to inform the chain. Rex stirred, whining softly, as if sensing the tide turning. Elias scratched behind his ears, the gesture simple, profound. The rapids had tested them, but the true current flowed onward, carrying lessons of trust that would redefine the ranks, one measured step at a time. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elias Kane reach those who still believe in honor. The morning briefing room at Naval Base Coronado filled with the low murmur of operators settling into folding chairs, the air thick with the scent of fresh brewed coffee from a battered percolator, and the faint, lingering ozone from overnight equipment checks. Master Chief Elias Kane entered last, his boots echoing softly on the linoleum. Rex at heel with the leash clipped but loose, the dog's nails tapping a steady counterpoint. Sunlight slanted through high windows, gilding the squadron's crest on the wall, a trident etched in gold, symbol of the unyielding path they'd all sworn to tread. Commander Reyes stood at the podium, his folder open to the final tribunal addendum. The pages crisp under his steady hands. "Attention!" Reyes called, the room snapping to order, chairs scraping as spines straightened. Elias took his seat in the front row, Rex curling neatly beside him, ears perked toward the commander's voice. The platoon filled the space, petty officers Ramirez and Hale among them, their faces composed, eyes forward in the disciplined hush that followed every post-inquiry assembly. Voss occupied a side chair, his posture alert but devoid of the earlier edge, the lines of his face softened by the resolution's weight. The JAG board has concluded review of the incident, dated 15th October. Master Chief Kane, your actions are commended for preserving civilian life without operational compromise. No charges under Article 92. A subtle exhale rippled through the room, not audible, but felt in the shift of shoulders, the faint creak of leather belts. Elias kept his gaze level, nodding once as Reyes continued. However, the event underscores deficiencies in current protocols. Effective immediately, K-9 units will incorporate hybrid response training. Welfare alerts integrated into perimeter exercises, with handler discretion expanded for exigent civilian interfaces. Master Chief Kane, you'll lead the revision working group, drawing from your operational experience. Elias rose at the cue, saluting sharply, the motion precise. Aye, sir, honored to serve. Rex's tail thumped once against the floor, a quiet affirmation that drew the barest flicker of smiles from the ranks. The commander gestured him forward, handing over a sealed envelope, the formal commendation, its seal unbroken, carrying the Admiral's signature. This isn't just for the file, Kane. It's for the handbook. Your judgment and Rex's instincts set a precedent. The chain bends, but it doesn't break when guided by conscience. As the briefing dismissed with a chorus of "Carry on!", the operators filed out, boots thudding in synchronized rhythm down the corridor, the base awakening to full tempo. The whine of a turbine engine spooling up on the tarmac, the sharp tang of jet fuel drifting in on the breeze, the distant bark of another handler's Malinois echoing from the kennels. Elias lingered, clipping Rex's leash for the walk to the training grounds, the dog's warmth pressing against his leg like an anchor in swelling seas. Ramirez fell in step beside them, his voice low over the gravel crunch. "Chief, the platoon's running sims with the new mods already. Voss pulled strings, says it's about evolving, not punishing." Elias nodded, the envelope tucked into his blouse. "It's weight light, but profound. It's the work that matters. Rex didn't follow orders, he followed his nose. We build from there." The pair reached the riverbank, now cordoned with fresh signage. Restricted area, active training. The water's surface glassy under the climbing sun, currents whispering over rocks smoothed by countless drills. A small plaque had been affixed to a post nearby, unassuming brass, in recognition of instinctive valor, 15th October. No names, no fanfare, just a marker for the ripple that started with a yellow toy and a dog's unerring swim. Word of the reforms spread through the ranks like a secure dispatch, threading into daily routines. In the handler's bay that afternoon, Elias gathered the K-9 team, 6 operators and their partners, leashes coiled neatly on hooks, the air humming with the soft pant of dogs at rest. "New directive," he began, unrolling a blueprint of revised scenarios. Scent trails weaving toward simulated civilian zones, alerts calibrated for distress over threat alone. "We train the bond, not just the command. Rex leads the first run." The handlers nodded, gloved hands absently stroking fur, eyes reflecting the quiet shift from rigid protocol to adaptive trust. Voss joined midway, clipboard in hand, his presence a bridge across the earlier divide. "Master Chief, I've reviewed the prelims. Solid framework. Incorporate chain of command checkpoints. Override logs for JAG transparency." Elias met his gaze, the nod mutual, respect forged in the tribunal's fire. "Will do, sir. Keeps us sharp without the blind spots." As the session broke, Voss paused at the door, voice pitched for Elias alone. "You tested the line, pushed it forward, units stronger for it." The lieutenant commander saluted out. The gesture held a beat longer, a silent acknowledgement of the moral courage that had reframed their world. By week's end, the changes cascaded. Squadron-wide briefs incorporating the Kane protocol as it whispered through the barracks, emphasizing K-9 as force multipliers in grey area ops. Elias mentored the rookies during evening quals, his voice steady over the splash of water entries. "Watch the cues, eyes, posture. The dog's your compass when orders lag." Ramirez, now leading a sub-team, echoed it in his own drills. The platoon's cohesion tightening like a well-knotted line. Rex, ever the exemplar, powered through mock currents, nose locked on decoy scents laced with simulated child distress, his retrievals flawless, pulling handlers into deeper understanding. The base command hosted a low-key ceremony at dusk, the parade deck bathed in the golden hush of setting sun, flags snapping in the offshore wind. Elias stood at attention, with the K9 unit, Rex's harness gleaming, as Reyes pinned a cluster to his ribbons, a meritorious service medal, understated but etched with the incident's legacy. The Admiral's words carried over the assembly. In the SEALs, we honor not just the fight, but the choices that define us. Master Chief Kane and his partner exemplify that integrity. Applause rippled, restrained and professional, boots shifting on concrete still warm from the day. As the formation dispersed, Elias walked the perimeter trail with Rex, the river murmuring below, its banks now patrolled with enhanced sensors per the reforms. The toy's splash felt distant, a catalyst dissolved into broader tides. Elias's career, once shadowed by potential reprimand, now anchored the unit's evolution. Mentorship sessions booked months out, invitations from Pendleton for cross-training. He became the symbol, not of defiance, but of disciplined conscience, his story circulating in secure journals as a case study for ethical ops. In the quiet of quarters that night, with Rex settled on his mat, Elias reviewed the updated manual draft. The pages marked with annotations from the team. The institution had learned, its rigid hierarchy yielding to the human pulse beneath, the loyalty of a handler to his dog, the courage to act when silence cost more than words. The rapids had forged them, and in their wake, the chain of command flowed stronger, attuned to the unseen currents of morality. The sun rose the next morning over a base transformed in subtle measure, where a single act of trust echoed through every briefing, every leash clipped, reminding all that true strength lay in the bond that defied the current. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching. The case of a child's toy floated downstream. The SEAL's dog jumped in and swam toward the rapids. See you in the next one.